Listen to me clearly. If you keep your mouth shut, all of you will die before you can even gasp." In the courtroom filled with the stench of corruption and lies in Chicago, Ray Mullen's henchmen finally broke down and turned, exposing the filthy faces of the rotten power players. Justice spares no bastard, no matter how well they disguise themselves. Which state are you in? Does that place have the guts to expose the rotten worms? The night fell over Chicago with a light drizzle, cold droplets pattering on the damp road. Puddles scattered across the street reflected flickering yellow light from the old street lamps, creating a bleak and isolated scene. In the distance, the soft wail of a police siren echoed faintly from hidden alleys, adding a tense, suffocating atmosphere as if signaling the approach of a turbulent day. The city was filled with unease, cold winds creeping into every corner, prolonging the darkness and haze of the night. Inside a small bar tucked away in a street corner, Ray Mullen sat silently, alone at the counter. The dim light was not enough to dispel the sadness etched deep into the wrinkles of his experienced face. The strong whiskey before him was sipped slowly, a way to hold on to the faint warmth in the cold night. His cold, deep eyes stared into the void, as if recalling a stack of memories. Flickering images of past cases, moments of excessive use of power, and unpredictable shadows were gradually engulfing his life and career. Ray was not only a seasoned police officer, but also someone who had endured many intense battles within the system. The pressure from the job, colleagues, and external adversaries kept his mind as tense as a drawn string. Inside Ray, there was an indescribable restlessness, a fear that the power he had built might collapse in an instant. A career spanning many years could turn to ashes after the upcoming trial. However, alongside that fear was a confidence tinged with arrogance. He believed he could control everything, or at least would not be easily subdued. Around the bar, the atmosphere carried a different tone. Some regular patrons watched Ray closely, their eyes a mix of curiosity and caution. Soft whispers slipped through the gentle background music, interrupted irregularly by the clinking of glasses from nearby tables. This familiar space hid a simmering tension, as if everyone awaited something to happen. Ray sensed the gaze but did not look back, maintaining his usual cold, contemplative posture. Suddenly, Ray's phone vibrated on the table. He reached for it, the light from the small screen illuminating his worn, tired face. The message read, "Tomorrow, teach them a lesson. Don't hesitate." The words acted as a command, encouragement, and a hidden warning all at once. Ray understood this was not a casual remark, but a setup from inside the system, possibly from superiors or close allies within the police department. His eyes flashed with a fiery mix of anger and steely determination. A slight nod echoed silently in his mind, a vow that no one would stand in his way tomorrow. Raising his whiskey glass, Ray took a long drink, feeling the burning liquid flow down his throat, dispelling some of the creeping chill inside. He stood, putting on his worn coat, and stepped out of the bar. The drizzle continued, covering all the streets, making the air colder and hazier than ever. The figure of the aging man walked slowly through the wet streets, streetlights reflecting on the water, highlighting his hurried yet pressured steps. His thoughts and deep resolve burned quietly like a smoldering fire, ready to flare up on the fateful day ahead. In that silent moment, Ray keenly felt the heavy responsibility weighing on his shoulders. He was not just an ordinary policeman. He stood on the edge between power and collapse, between justice and the darkness of corruption. That gloomy night was not merely preparation for a trial, but the beginning of a life and death battle, where every decision could change not only his fate, but that of the entire city of Chicago. Inside the Chicago police station, a small office hidden deep in a quiet corridor was filled with an indescribable tension. Flickering fluorescent lights reflected off the silver-gray walls as if trying to swallow every conspiracy discussed in the cramped space. A group of Ray Mullen's close colleagues gathered, speaking cautiously in hushed tones. The atmosphere was taut like a stretched string, whispers mixed with wary glances making the room feel even more suffocating. Everyone understood that a small mistake could lead to serious consequences, not only for themselves, but for the entire system. Ray stood silently in a corner, his cold eyes scrutinizing each person, trying to memorize every word and subtle sign. As the exchanges grew more intimate, one of the group stepped closer, placing a hand gently on Ray's shoulder. This was his most trusted ally in the station, the one who knew secrets most others could not or dared not touch. They quickly exchanged plans for the next day, discussing the need for thorough preparation before entering the tense trial. Their brief words were filled with implied warnings about a traitor or a covert spy lurking within their ranks. Ray felt anger rising within, mingled with deep fear. Constant vigilance left him sleepless, his gaze fixed out the window, looking over a city shrouded in dense darkness. Memories of the last time, when he himself was betrayed and covertly exposed during an important hearing, surged into his mind. Small signs he had overlooked now stood out clearly. He silently vowed never to fail again. The enemy within would not get another chance to strike. Tensions among teammates grew as factional divisions within the police department became clearer. Some supported Ray, believing he was the last keeper of order amid chaos, while others quietly sided with the opposition, waiting for the right moment to overthrow. Pressure from above was invisible, yet heavy, with continuous secret meetings demanding the maintenance of image and power. Alongside were endless covert battles, factional struggles like endless dark wars. Once again, Ray's phone vibrated in his hand. A message from a close ally appeared. "Tomorrow everything will change. Prepare yourself." The message needed no further explanation. It signaled the uncompromising battle ahead. Ray sat by the window, his sharp eyes staring out at the city plunged in deep night. The cold wind blew through the window, making him shiver but also fueling his fighting spirit. In the brief calm, thoughts flooded Ray's mind. The responsibility on his shoulders was not only to protect his position, but the survival of a system that had existed too long in darkness. He knew tomorrow was not just a trial. It was the final battle between light and darkness, justice and corruption. He could not stop halfway. Whatever the outcome, Ray had to enter that fight fully prepared, with all the strength left in him. Chicago's dark night was not just a backdrop for a trial, but a symbol of a hidden war, where every step could decide the fate of many. For Ray, tonight was the moment of destiny, when whispers in the dark would turn into the roaring thunder of an inevitable battle. The Chicago Police Headquarters stood in an old neighborhood, its walls peeling with faded paint, fluorescent lights flickering as if struggling against time. The long, narrow hallway was shrouded in dim shadows, creating a suffocating and stifling atmosphere, much like the mood inside. Footsteps echoed evenly on the cold cement floor, mingling with the faint clatter of a typewriter from a nearby office and the soft ringing of a telephone, intensifying the tense and heavy environment. In a hidden corner of the hallway, a few men gathered closely, speaking cautiously in whispers. They stood near each other, their eyes constantly scanning as if fearing their words might be recorded or overheard. Rumors were spreading rapidly. There was a traitor in the team, someone planning to hand over classified files to the federal authorities, ready to expose dark secrets buried for years. Suspicion and anxiety thickened the air. Every glance shifted from vigilance to mutual scrutiny. No one knew who the traitor was, but all sensed the presence of danger within their own ranks. Tension within the group grew by the minute. Former teammates no longer dared to fully trust one another. Their eyes were filled with doubt, half seeking reassurance but also half on guard. The pressure of being exposed and losing everything made them overly cautious, every gesture and word carefully measured. It could be said that suspicion had turned the police headquarters into a nest of vipers, each ready to strike back at any counterattack. In hushed voices, the team discussed suspicious signs of the traitor. They mentioned unusual absences, secret meetings with outsiders, and changed attitudes toward old colleagues. A few new names or less communicative people were added to the list of suspects. Some even recounted small incidents, seemingly harmless actions that now appeared more suspicious than ever. Every detail was exaggerated, gradually forming a clearer picture of a betrayal quietly waiting to erupt. Still, everyone was too cautious to speak loudly or draw definite conclusions. They understood this was not just an internal dispute, but a purge that could reshape the entire police force. Therefore, secret coordination among Ray's closest allies intensified. They silently gathered information, monitored, and tried to stop the traitor before causing greater damage. Amid all the whispers and suspicion, Ray stood silently on the sidelines, revealing no emotion. His face was like an impenetrable fortress, without a single ripple of feeling. Yet deep in his eyes was a silent storm, iron determination and burning anger. He listened to every whispered word, memorized every sign and clue, preparing for the inevitable battle. It was not fear, but a challenge to the traitor lurking in the shadow. Hurrying footsteps echoed down the hallway. Whispered voices hurried past, like a prelude to a major upheaval. Ray knew that within hours, everything would change, and the victor would be the quickest and most ruthless. The heavy atmosphere enveloped the headquarters, threatening to overturn the entire system he had worked daily to maintain in unpredictable ways. With a cold gesture, Ray nodded slightly, silently promising himself he would not let any traitor in his team cause harm. "Thou crush them before they open their mouth." The words echoed in his mind like a curse, an unshakable resolve amid the approaching storm. In the darkness of the old headquarters, a real battle was about to break out. A small office deep within the police station radiated pale yellow light from an old desk lamp shining onto piles of scattered papers and documents. The cramped space seemed to compress all the conspiracies and schemes discussed quietly inside. Ray Mullen and his closest allies sat facing each other, their eyes mixing seriousness with maximum vigilance. The exchange was suffocatingly silent, each word heavy with meaning and urgency, like walking on a tightrope where a single misstep was impossible. The ally began, whispering anxiously. "There is confirmed news that there is a traitor in our team. They are plotting to submit classified files to the federal government, ready to expose our entire network." The warning was like a ticking bomb, instantly changing the room's atmosphere. Ray felt shaken, unease clinging tightly. The ghost of betrayal among teammates was becoming clearer, threatening to erase all the efforts and power he had built over the years. The flickering yellow light highlighted Ray's somber face. Anger flared with each heavy breath, mixed with steely determination. He looked directly at his ally, his voice cold but firm. "I will crush the traitor before they can open their mouth." The vow was more than words. It was a solemn, unbreakable oath. In Ray's heart, betrayal was unforgivable, and he would use every means to protect his power, honor, and life. Old memories surged in Ray's mind, times when he had been betrayed by his closest comrades. The scenes of friends who seemed close turning their backs, lies and covert conspiracies that had deeply wounded him still remained vivid. That feeling was like an unhealed wound, making Ray more cautious and fierce in the coming battle. Betrayal was not only a present danger, but a ghost of the past, driving him to prevent its recurrence. Relations between Ray and his superiors, as well as other colleagues, had become extremely tense. The pressure from those above was invisible, but undeniable. Demands to maintain image, retain power, and control the situation forced Ray to brace himself. Meanwhile, internal factions grew more distinct, with covert power struggles taking place silently but fiercely. In this whirlpool, Ray had to maintain his position and strike proactively, because a single small mistake could cost everything. The phone on the desk vibrated again, displaying a brief but meaningful message from an ally. "Prepare for tomorrow. This is no longer a game." The message was a warning of the coming storm, an unavoidable major event looming ahead. The room's atmosphere grew heavier and tenser, like the moment before a life or deathly battle. Ray had no room for mistakes or hesitation. As the meeting ended, Ray stood and moved to the large window overlooking Chicago, shrouded in darkness. Distant streetlights twinkled like faint hopes amid overwhelming night. His gaze was sharp, filled with determination and absolute vigilance. His mind overflowed with thoughts of the heavy responsibility on his shoulders, the dangers, and the fateful turning points ahead. He knew tomorrow would be the final battle, where justice and corruption would clash. and no one could stand outside that fight. In the quiet moment, Ray thought silently, I cannot let anyone on the team overthrow me. Do not let the shadow of betrayal cover everything I have built. Tomorrow I must prepare thoroughly. I will fight to the end or lose everything. That inner monologue echoed like a declaration, expressing the unwavering will of a man standing on the brink of glory and defeat. Chicago's cold, hazy night concealed a fire burning quietly inside Ray, ready to ignite in the deadly battle ahead. Courtroom was packed like a can of sardines. The courtroom hall was completely full today, with not a single small spot left empty. The rows of neatly arranged seats had turned into a dense sea of people, including lawyers, reporters, relatives of the accused, and ordinary curious citizens who had come to witness this major trial. Each person carried a different mood, but all were drawn into the tense and bustling atmosphere that enveloped the entire room. The murmur of conversations rose like continuous small waves, mixed with the steady whirring sounds of video cameras and the incessant ringing of phones live streaming the event. The press and online crowd held total dominance in this space. Reporters jostled for position, holding microphones in one hand and directing cameras with the other, hunting for the most valuable moments to capture. They were relentless hunters, determined not to miss a single moment that could ignite public opinion. On the phone screens of hundreds present, live streams were constantly updating, with viewers increasing by the minute, creating a powerful wave spreading across social media platforms. The event extended beyond the courtroom walls, drawing the attention of the entire city. Among those present, the mixed feelings of chaos and curiosity made the atmosphere indescribable. Ordinary citizens felt a blend of excitement and fear. They came not only to watch a trial, but to witness history being made. Meanwhile, lawyers and court staff maintained the necessary seriousness, but could hardly conceal the pressure visible on their faces. The fear of unpredictable incidents and legal consequences awaiting everyone involved caused extreme tension. The crowding and discomfort in the hall grew with every passing minute. Many tried to stand, searching for better spots to observe the upcoming events more clearly. The crowd gradually became mildly chaotic, with low arguments breaking out and tense gazes shifting positions like silent confrontations whose outcomes were yet unknown. The atmosphere was no longer just a courtroom. It had become an arena where every gaze was fixed and every gesture scrutinized. The sounds of cameras, phones, and whispered discussions blended into a lively yet tense symphony. Small conversations and rumors swirling around the trial and previous scandals heightened the suspense and expectations of everyone. All waited for the next developments, for truths yet unrevealed to gradually emerge under the light of justice. The courtroom atmosphere resembled a storm before a major battle. Everyone sensed they were about to witness a dramatic confrontation, a tense clash between power and truth. Sighs and focused eyes followed each step of the person about to enter the courtroom. The accumulated tension made the entire room hold its breath. Every moment was ready to explode like a smoldering fire waiting for a spark to flare into an uncontrollable blaze. As soon as the courtroom door closed behind a figure entering, all eyes immediately focused there with full concentration. Whispering rose, small questions crashing in waves. A newcomer, a novice, or a figurehead? Will they have the strength to preside over the trial? The hall seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see the newcomer clearly. Yet the presiding judge's face remained hidden, still cloaked in soft shadows, creating an atmosphere full of mystery and sparking everyone's curiosity. The newcomer entered slowly, steps steady but unremarkable. The figure was not large, carrying a calm demeanor like an unanswered enigma. The light in the room gradually focused on the judge's seat. The figure became clearer, yet the presiding judge maintained the necessary discretion. Reporters continuously tried to film close-ups of the first images, but the judge showed no emotion, as if fully prepared to face whatever storm lay ahead. The courtroom's atmosphere grew heavy and filled with unease. Quiet conversations between lawyers and reporters increased the feeling of suspense, mixed with relentless curiosity. Some in the crowd speculated that this judge might make a difference, possibly changing the entire course of the trial. They spoke of hidden strength, wisdom, and decisiveness necessary to maintain order and justice in a complex trial. However, many remained skeptical, doubting the newcomer's capability. They wondered if the judge could confront the underground forces waiting to overturn justice. Eyes flickered between hope and doubt. The atmosphere froze briefly as the judge slowly sat down. Silence enveloped the hall. No one dared make sudden movements or loud noises. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the first words, the first decisions from this mysterious judge. It felt as if they had just entered a new chapter of the story, a critical turning point where every event would be decided and every fate revealed under justice's light. Everyone awaited the moment when the newcomer would speak, triggering a chain of dramatic and unexpected developments. The courtroom space was shrouded in a mysterious haze, each passing second fueling intense curiosity and anticipation in every heart. This was the moment when many destinies would be changed, and where justice and power would confront each other head-on. Ray Mullen sat imposingly in the courtroom, like a king without a throne amid the crowd. His gaze was cold and sharp, following every movement in the room as if trying to control all developments. Ray's arrogant and confident demeanor was unmistakable. He believed he held absolute power in this trial. He was not only a veteran police officer, but also a symbol of strength and dominance. Every look he gave seemed to warn and threaten anyone daring to oppose him. The next witness trembled as they stepped up to the stand, their small figure weighed down by the pressure of hundreds of eyes fixed on them. The witness's voice was gentle but shaky, words growing sparse from fear and tension. Their awkward gestures and eyes constantly searching the crowd for support revealed a deep-seated fear. The pressure came not only from those present, but also from invisible forces monitoring every word, ready to punish if the answers did not align with expectations. Suddenly, the courtroom fell into an unusual silence. As the new judge stood up, the light but authoritative footsteps echoed, each step of the petite woman creating a strong pull that no one could look away from. Her arrival was not just a sign of change, but a warning of a new power that would determine the trial's fate. Under the bright yellow courtroom lights, Camille Reed's face gradually became clear. Her eyes shone like steel mirrors, radiating undeniable sharpness and decisiveness. Small but steady and confident, she carried the solemnity of a powerful judge. Her professional attire highlighted her dignity and leadership qualities. Camille's appearance sparked waves of surprise and astonishment in the courtroom. No one expected that a petite woman could be the one to control today's proceedings. The atmosphere in the courtroom dropped, silence acting both as respect and caution toward Camille's latent power. Everyone understood that she was not merely the presiding judge, but a symbol of change and fresh authority that could not be underestimated. The eyes of all involved parties continuously followed every gesture and slight expression of hers, waiting for the first moves that would alter the situation. Standing before the crowd, Camille showed clear confidence and decisiveness through her sharp gaze and calm demeanor. She fully understood the heavy responsibility on her shoulders, but also felt the great power the position bestowed. The blend of keen intellect and steadfastness allowed her to master the situation and become the focal point of every glance. At the end of this part, the spotlight focused directly on Camille, highlighting her stern face and resolute eyes. The courtroom seemed to sink into absolute silence, as if all sounds had frozen in this decisive moment. It felt like a new chapter, a challenging and turbulent phase unfolding right before everyone's eyes. This was the moment Camille Reed officially rose, becoming the secret key player who would change the fate of the trial and possibly the city of Chicago. Camille Reed stood tall before the courtroom and spoke decisively and clearly. "The trial is officially underway." This statement marked not only the beginning of the trial, but also created a solemn, formal atmosphere enveloping the entire hall. Whispering and murmurs ceased. Everyone stopped to listen closely to every syllable from the new judge's mouth. Camille's words were like a command, an irresistible order that forced all to submit to the power present. Immediately, all eyes in the courtroom turned to her. The looks were full of curiosity and admiration, mixed with some doubt and anxiety. Opposing lawyers whispered among themselves, discussing the new changes and strategizing on how to adjust their plans to face this determined presiding judge. Court staff and reporters watched intently, trying to capture every gesture and subtle expression of Camille in preparation for the trial's next steps. In a corner, Ray Mullen silently observed. His confident gaze gradually shifted to unease and worry. He realized the balance of power was beginning to change, no longer held absolutely by him as before. His thoughts revolved around whether he could still control the trial. Fear crept in. He knew the opponent he faced was not ordinary. He had to stay alert and ready for the surprises Camille would bring. The tension in the courtroom grew heavier than ever. Every word and action of Camille was closely monitored, becoming the center of attention for all present. Her strict management of the trial gradually reversed the power dynamic, placing Ray's faction on the defensive. The hidden threat to him and his allies became clearer, risking their plans being shattered at any moment. What impressed everyone most was the stark contrast between Camille's small stature and the enormous power she wielded. A woman not tall, modest in figure, yet possessing dignity, sharpness in every word, and decisiveness in every action. This contrast created a special attraction, forcing everyone to reconsider their real position and strength in this power game. The reactions of the involved parties varied. Some tried to remain calm, showing professionalism and preparing mentally to respond. Others began to show concern, furrowing brows and avoiding Camilla's gaze. Opposing lawyers whispered new strategies, discussing how to handle a presiding judge who seemed unlikely to be subdued. Everyone realized the battlefield had shifted. Everything was now under Camilla's control. Camille skillfully managed the trial with sharp questions and firm commands, making the atmosphere noticeably stricter. She allowed no loopholes, catching the opposition off guard. Each question was provocative, exposing weaknesses and contradictions in the opposing testimonies. Her handling of every situation earned admiration for her courage and professional subtlety. By the end of this part, it felt as if the power balance had completely changed. Camille was no longer an anonymous figure, but had officially become the key piece on this power chessboard. The atmosphere was heavy, but also full of promise for upcoming developments and dramatic turning points she would create during the trial. This was the moment justice began to speak, and those hiding the truth would face the inevitable light. The trial continued in a thick, tense atmosphere. After the moment of authoritative presence from Judge Camille Reed, everyone focused all their attention on the new presiding judge. The eyes of those present, from lawyers to witnesses and reporters, concentrated fully, watching every gesture and word spoken in the courtroom. The space seemed to freeze. Every breath could be heard clearly. The prolonged silence of waiting made everyone sense that a turning point was about to occur. Suddenly, Ray Mullen's loud laughter broke that tense silence. The sound was harsh, bitter, and full of contempt, like a slap back at the solemnity of the trial. Ray laughed loudly, with a tone overflowing with mockery and excessive confidence as he turned toward Camille, spitting out a cruel remark. "Black kid, daring to boss me around?" The words were like a sharp dagger stabbing directly into the judge's pride and authority, while also openly challenging the entire legal system present in the courtroom. The reaction of everyone in the courtroom was an unexpected, uncomfortable silence. There were sighs, and many eyes flashed with anger and resentment at such blatant racial discrimination. Many sat still, trying to restrain their emotions to maintain order, but the tension grew thicker than ever. Meanwhile, Camille kept a calm expression, not letting the insult shake her composure. Her eyes flickered with inner restraint, as if weighing every next move carefully. She knew this was not just a personal insult, but a test of her strength and courage against hostile forces. Ray displayed arrogant confidence not only through words, but also through gestures and eyes. He looked down on the judge's power, viewing her as a mere obstacle he could easily crush. His hands could clench into fists, and his eyes glared challengingly at anyone who might intervene. Every action he took radiated the power of a man who had once stood at the pinnacle of the police force, used to wielding authority to suppress others and unwilling to be commanded by anyone. His dominance in the way he laughed, spoke, and stood in the courtroom like a ruler of an underground empire left no doubt about his danger. Ray's words quickly caused a widespread effect in the courtroom. The lawyers reacted diversely. Some frowned with discomfort, others bit their lips to suppress emotions, while some exchanged wary and anxious glances. Nearby witnesses could not hide their outrage, whispering among themselves, unable to believe that someone in the legal system could make such discriminatory and offensive remarks. Meanwhile, some ordinary citizens present, who always believed in justice, felt Ray's words as a harsh blow, but also a motivation to pursue the truth even more determinedly. The inner response of those on the side of justice was an overwhelming anger, accompanied by an uncompromising determination against brutal acts, racial discrimination, and abuse of power. They understood that this was no longer a simple case, but a battle for a fairer future, for a society with no place for people like Ray. Conversely, those aligned with Ray showed signs of worry and unease because the provocative words could mark the beginning of the collapse of the power system they held. The courtroom atmosphere became suffocating like never before, as the cunning and contemptuous words acted as a catalyst, triggering a series of tense and fierce events. Everyone sensed that this was only the first bait in a tough battle ahead, where power, truth, and justice would collide violently, and no one could predict the final outcome. In the cramped and pressured space of the courtroom, as all eyes were fixed on Judge Camille, Ray Mullen took an action completely different from his violent words and gestures. Under the table, he stealthily pulled out his phone, hiding it from the sight of those around. His fingers pressed keys swiftly, sending a message filled with calculation and malice. "Open Route B. Eliminate the files." The brief command carried a heavy weight, like an alarm signal. This was not an ordinary order, but part of a quietly prepared plan aimed at preserving power and erasing all evidence that could lead to his and his accomplices' downfall. Ray's message was immediately sent to a network of allies he had built over many years, including trusted members within the police force and reliable henchmen tasked with sensitive and dangerous missions. These people were ready to start carefully planned actions, destroying evidence, burning confidential files, and even causing disruption within the court and police headquarters. This coordination happened in darkness, discreet and cunning, designed to create waves of chaos to shield the crimes Ray and his allies had committed. Every step was calculated carefully to leave no trace and avoid detection by investigative agencies. Behind the tense eyes and aggressive gestures, Ray was a calculating and cold man. In his mind, every action had one sole purpose: to protect power and prevent the collapse of the system he had built. He was not only a violent brute who used force to suppress opponents, but also a strategic warrior who understood how the legal system operated and how to exploit its loopholes for advantage. The contradiction between his rough exterior and cold, cunning mind created an image of Ray that was both terrifying and unpredictable. Under the dim courtroom lights, Ray's accomplices received the message and began preparing for the plan. A group quickly arranged necessary tools, including sabotage equipment, forged documents, and means to create controlled chaos. They moved quietly, avoiding prying eyes, but their minds boiled with the danger lurking ahead. This was not an ordinary resistance, but a battle to preserve the life of power amid the looming threat of collapse everywhere. The atmosphere grew heavier. Every preparation step made hearts beat faster. The story's drama peaked as readers could feel the looming crisis, the constant sense of danger. Every action, every silent plan was like a sharpened dagger waiting to stab straight into the heart of the trial and justice. The section ended with a clearer picture of an underground battle. The intrigues, schemes, and cruelty within the shadow power circle gradually unfolded, promising thrilling and unpredictable developments in the next parts of the story. Readers could not help but anxiously wait to see whether Ray's silent plan would succeed or be shattered by the power of justice and the steadfastness of those fighting for the truth. The atmosphere in the courtroom gradually became suffocating, to the point where even the smallest sounds drew attention. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Camille Reed, the woman seated on the judge's chair, her face as cold as ice. All voices, sighs, and the rustling of paper quieted down as she straightened her back, preparing for a decision that would change the entire course of the trial. A dense silence enveloped the room, as if everyone was waiting for a signal to know how the next move in this game would unfold. Camille did not rush or hurry. She lifted the judge's gavel, gently placed it on the table, then struck it down with a sharp knock that echoed, a cold sound like invisible scissors cutting off all the remaining noise and disruption in the courtroom. The sound not only halted all activity but also asserted authority, drawing a clear boundary between those upholding justice and those standing before the bench. Each strike of the gavel was an undeniable declaration: today, the truth would be revealed. The tense atmosphere sharpened everyone's gaze to its fullest focus. Camille tapped the gavel a few more times, as if clearing away all doubts and shadows in the case. When the final knock fell, she declared firmly, "I summon the third witness to appear in today's trial." Her voice was decisive, allowing no objection or delay. This announcement immediately shocked the courtroom. Those present were surprised because this third witness had never been mentioned during the investigation. Lawyers, reporters, and attendees exchanged scrutinizing looks and whispered conversations. Most importantly, Ray Mullen's eyes reflected a clear change. Initially surprised, they quickly shifted to deep worry. He tried to maintain a calm demeanor, his gaze remaining cold but unable to hide the creeping fear beginning to invade his mind. The silence following Camille's statement made the tension in the courtroom even denser. The threatening looks from the judge seemed to pierce straight through Ray, making him feel an unavoidable pressure. This feeling came not only from Camille's authority, but also from her unwavering determination visible in her eyes. Ray understood that if the third witness appeared, his plan would face the risk of collapse. Citizens, lawyers, and reporters present were drawn in by Camille's intensity and authority. They sensed a different energy in the air, an important turning point approaching. Many whispered speculations about the upcoming witness and their potential impact on the case. The courtroom atmosphere grew suffocating, like anxious and expectant, like the moments before a great storm that could not be avoided. Everyone remained silent, striving to maintain focus, as their eyes never left the judge. This concentration was not only on Camille, but also on the forthcoming developments that would mark the trial's turning point. Everything seemed poised at the threshold of change, where truth and justice might be fully exposed or extinguished in darkness. That space, the cold gavel strikes, Camille's sharp gaze, and the courtroom's tense silence, created a powerful image of authority, opening the way for intense and complex events to come. Observers, attendees, and even Ray Mullen clearly sensed that this was no longer an ordinary trial, but a fierce mental battle where every action and word could change the course, and every mistake would be costly. Immediately after the summons for the third witness was issued, the entire courtroom seemed to awaken to an unforeseen turning point. This witness was not simply someone involved in the matter, but the key to exposing every hidden corner and long-concealed secret. Lawyers, reporters, and all present awaited new revelations that would clarify prolonged mysteries. Everyone guessed this witness possessed irrefutable evidence that could shake the entire corrupt system lurking behind the scenes. Some even silently thought this might be someone who had directly witnessed or held important secret documents, capable of completely turning the trial's outcome. Camille Reed allowed no one the chance to overshadow or block this important witness's appearance. She used sharp, decisive language like invisible scissors sealing every loophole. She emphasized the witness's importance, making those intending to oppose her wary. No one could deny that this trial had entered its most serious phase. The presence of the third witness was like a legal sword hanging over the heads of corrupt figures, threatening to pierce through all false covers. Ray Mullen's reaction was swift and clear. He realized immediately that this was no longer a normal trial, but a fight for survival. The pressure weighing on his mind forced him to fall silent temporarily without the reckless, provocative words he had used before. Although he tried to adjust his expression to hide fear and unease, his eyes could not conceal the secret worries and fears flooding him. He understood that all plans to sabotage the trial might collapse under the weight of the evidence about to be revealed. The trial was no longer simply a legal struggle. It had become a stage where power and intellect were displayed through every word and gesture. Camille used all her experience and subtlety to steer the trial, forcing Ray to lose control and preventing further manipulation or disruption. The sharpness in her speech and the logic in her analysis brought the most damaging evidence against Ray and his accomplices into the light. There was no room left to hide or pretend. Every truth was peeled away, leaving the man standing before the bench more confused and broken. The section ended with Camille's direct gaze at Ray, creating an almost suffocating atmosphere in the courtroom. Her eyes were not just a warning, but carried a message impossible to misunderstand. You cannot avoid or deny. Silence covered everyone. No one dared break that moment as all attention focused on the man torn apart by invisible but overwhelming pressure. That very moment paved the way for the next developments of the story, making everyone sense a promising climax ahead. The large courtroom was illuminated by cold white floodlights, with light filtering through the tall windows near the ceiling, creating faint beams across the worn wooden benches. The rhythmic clicking of cameras was constant, mingling with the murmurs of observers and the soft rustling of the crowd behind. The once quiet space became lively yet suffocating, like a battle waiting to ignite. The tension in the room clung to everyone like a faint haze of gunpowder smoke, signaling an intense confrontation whose outcome no one could predict. In this atmosphere, Ray Mullen held a bottle of water in his hand, his eyes flashing with sharp focus. He did not drink immediately, but gently shook the bottle, the liquid inside producing soft, clinking sounds, like the uneven beats of an anxious mood. This gesture had become a habit, a way for Ray to maintain calm under the scrutiny of countless eyes, tracking his every slight movement. Yet even this subtle shake could not hide the deep-rooted unease gradually surfacing within him. Ray's gaze quickly scanned the courtroom. Each look was probing and assessing, as if testing and warning everyone present. He swept past the row of reporters busy with cameras and stopped at the lawyers with attentive eyes. Most notably, his eyes never left Judge Camille Reed, the petite woman wielding full authority over the trial. Every glance from Ray was a silent warning. I am watching your every move. Though trying to appear calm, Ray's eyes revealed a different state of mind. Inside, fear and suspicion surged powerfully. He knew this was no longer a simple trial like before. The feeling of being surrounded and cornered allowed chaos to invade his thoughts. Moments appeared when his eyes briefly faltered, as if struggling with an invisible fear that he could not voice. The pressure came not only from those in the courtroom, but also from the many camera lenses constantly pointed at him. Reporters continuously panned and recorded every expression and subtle gesture of Ray. Each frame, each shot was a piece in the vast media puzzle where any small mistake would be exposed and spread at lightning speed. The relentless media attention was a massive weight, leaving Ray no chance to hide or escape. Because of this, the courtroom atmosphere grew more suffocating than ever. Tense words and sharp glances mingled with the smell of gunpowder, a metaphor for the ever-present tension and danger, creating a feeling as if facing a life-and-death battle. Everyone sensed this was not merely a legal dispute, but a war between justice and dark power. Every passing second was a heartbeat of tension, pushing the trial to a peak, ready for unforeseen developments. The courtroom's tension had not yet eased, though people quieted somewhat after Camille's decisive gavel strike. Whispered conversations slipped through corners, and lawyers exchanged tense looks over recent events. Under the judge's stern authority, voices gradually diminished to near silence, leaving a heavy atmosphere pressing down on everyone present. The lawyers began preparing their next moves, eyes fixed on Ray Mullen, who stood at the center of the conflict. Those tense, scrutinizing looks seemed to say it all. This was no longer a simple fight, but a battle for survival. Ray struggled to maintain composure. He swallowed hard and took a deep breath to steady his breathing. The gentle but continuous shaking of the water bottle seemed to be his way of reassuring himself, trying to mask the trembling rising in every cell. Yet those actions inadvertently revealed his inner turmoil, adding to the tense air surrounding him. Each shake of the bottle felt like a countdown heartbeat to the crucial moment when all truths would explode. Inside Ray, a fierce struggle raged. He thought about the consequences if the third witness spoke out, undeniable evidence that would shake the entire foundation he and his accomplices had built to hide their crimes. Fear of exposure and punishment flooded his mind, but alongside it, anger also erupted. He resented being caught, the sharp scissors of Camille tearing apart all his plans. Helplessness and rage washed over him like a violent wave, pushing him into a corner with no escape. Pressure from the media and public opinion mounted relentlessly. Ray's image was broadcast live on large screens inside the courtroom and across media channels outside. Comments occasionally echoed through the speakers, sharp analyses from journalists dissecting the trial, making him feel trapped in an inescapable battlefield. Every move and word he made became subject to the harshest public scrutiny and judgment. The feeling of being cornered was not only legal pressure, but also unbearable psychological weight. The tense silence seemed intertwined with words like invisible bullets aimed directly at Ray's psyche. Every breath, glance, or small gesture could shatter the delicate plan he and his allies had painstakingly built. Ray felt the fragility of his position, knowing that every step ahead must be extremely cautious or everything would fall to pieces. Across from him, Camille maintained her cold, unwavering gaze. She symbolized strictness and authority, allowing no one to break order or justice in her courtroom. Her look was a silent warning to all standing before justice. No leniency would be accepted. Her solemn silence created an invisible force compelling full compliance. She closed her eyes. Ray silently looked toward Camille, his eyes mixing caution and mental preparation for the fierce battle ahead. He knew this was not just an ordinary trial, but a life-or-death fight between powerful forces and those fighting for justice. Every step and word in the time to come would decide the fate of him and those involved. The heavy yet determined feeling enveloped Ray's mind in this moment of waiting and readiness, paving the way for increasingly intense and dramatic developments. The atmosphere in the courtroom had reached an extreme point of tension. Every eye was fixed on the center of the trial, where Ray Mullen sat with a tense face and distracted thoughts. He felt the heavy pressure like a storm, pounding relentlessly, making his already unstable mood even more chaotic. Ray's gaze began to shift from a feigned calm to a silent anger, a long-suppressed fury that could no longer be contained. Each breath grew heavier, each movement gradually becoming uncontrollable. Suddenly, like a lightning strike from the sky, Ray stood up abruptly. This unexpected action stunned everyone in the courtroom into silence. The sound of a chair scraping loudly against the floor shattered the usual order. His footsteps echoed on the tiled floor, each step emphasizing both determination and the rising loss of control in his mind. The air seemed compressed, with all eyes closely tracking his every move. No one dared to breathe heavily or move abruptly at that moment. Ray's words burst out like sharp knives, each phrase dripping with contempt and blatant challenge. Crude curses and relentless profanity were hurled directly at Camille Reed and the entire attentive courtroom. His voice rang out clearly, without hesitation or fear, each sentence striking a fierce blow to the pride and authority of the female judge. Every word and tone was expressed with chilling intensity, making the atmosphere even more suffocating and tense. The witnesses' reactions were inevitably chaotic. Whispers spread quickly, accompanied by long sighs and worried headshakes. The crowd's eyes shifted from shock to fury, reflecting anger at Ray's vulgar language and uncontrolled behavior. Some lawyers tried to maintain order, gently reminding everyone to stay quiet, but their voices were drowned out by the increasing disorder. Reporters seized the opportunity, preparing to film and record as quickly as possible what was happening, knowing this could be a crucial moment, a significant turning point that would heavily influence public opinion. Meanwhile, Camille Reed remained calm and cold. Not a trace of wavering or anger appeared on her face. Instead of responding with words or actions of a similar nature, she simply raised her head slightly, her sharp eyes fixed on Ray, as if to say that his words would not shake her. Camille's silence at this moment carried more weight than any reprimand. It was an undeniable authority, a symbol of steadfast justice amid chaos and rage. She demonstrated that despite being insulted, justice would remain unshaken, and any reckless actions would only expose the wrongness of the opponent. This scene, between the chaos of offensive words and Camille's calm authority, created a dramatically contrasting picture. It was not merely a personal quarrel, but a symbol of the battle between right and wrong, between dark power and the light of justice. Every action and word was recorded, preparing for the tense and unpredictable developments to come in the trial. The courtroom air still carried the echoes of the recent outburst. Ray Mullen's curses and harsh words lingered in everyone's mind. However, Camille Reed did not let this shake her resolve. She calmly lifted the judge's gavel and placed it down lightly but decisively on the table, producing a sharp click full of authority that cut through the chaotic noise spreading in the courtroom. The gavel's sound was a clear signal to all that any disruption would be immediately suppressed and order must be maintained. Camille's gavel strike was more than a simple gesture. It symbolized power and unyielding severity. The decisive sound drew every eye in the courtroom to focus on her, creating absolute silence. No one dared to speak or make a loud movement, for everyone understood this was a clear warning to anyone intending to break order or challenge the judge's authority. Immediately afterward, Camille spoke in a stern, uncompromising voice, delivering a short but commanding order. "Officer Mullen, sit down." Her words echoed through the courtroom like an undeniable assertion of Ray's position and role in the trial. It was not forgiveness or leniency, but a serious warning, demanding absolute obedience from the man standing amid anger and pressure. Ray's reaction to the order was a clear shock. His face showed confusion and a moment of hesitation in facing Camille's undeniable authority. He understood that, whether he liked it or not, there was no choice but to obey. Slowly, Ray sat back down, trying to hide the simmering anger inside, but his eyes could not conceal frustration and resentment. They were the eyes of someone whose power was limited, pushed into a disadvantageous position, without the ability to resist. But Ray's return to his seat marked a sign that order in the courtroom was beginning to be restored. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Previous tensions gradually gave way to renewed focus. Lawyers prepared mentally and gathered materials for the next steps of the trial. Witnesses grew ready to provide testimony, and the audience and media concentrated on recording the developments moving toward a serious path of justice. In the courtroom's corner, Camille's sharp eyes continued to follow Ray's every move. Her gaze was not just a simple observation, but conveyed a powerful message. Control of power fully belonged to her. Camille used calmness and decisiveness to maintain order, showing she would not allow any chaos to ruin the trial or weaken the force of justice. That solemn presence became the firm foundation for what was to come, where every action and decision would be under the light of fairness and strictness. At this moment, the courtroom was silent in a different way, no longer filled with shouting or chaos, but with serious and cautious preparation for the next steps in this fierce legal battle. The combination of the sharp gavel strike and firm command transformed Camille into an unshakable symbol of justice amid a challenging trial. The eyes following her were also eyes preparing for an ongoing mental duel with an uncertain end. The atmosphere in the courtroom was so heavy that one could feel the suffocating tension engulfing everything. Every gaze in the room shifted constantly, changing from initial surprise to a state of nervous anticipation and worry. Everyone recognized the signs of an approaching storm, an event that could completely alter the course of the trial. Soft sighs and furtive glances exchanged among lawyers, witnesses, and reporters clearly reflected the rising tension minute by minute. At the center, Ray Mullen stood like a lion trapped. The pressure weighing on his mind reached its limit. turning all his actions and thoughts into chaos. The sense of threat came not only from the judge's authority, but also from hundreds of eyes watching his every move, along with countless cameras and recording devices ready to capture every mistake. This build-up pushed Ray into a state beyond his control. Suddenly, like a flame ignited by long-suppressed frustration, Ray roared in a frenzied voice. Each word he spat out was like a sharp dagger, cutting through the silence and shaking the courtroom. His words were not mere challenges but carried deep contempt, as if he wanted to tear everything apart before him. His voice rang loudly, dramatic and firm, causing everyone to turn with a mixture of astonishment and fear. Inside Ray's mind was the explosion of a powerful man on the brink of collapse. He felt scorned, treated like a weakling, and losing control was his last way to resist. The long-accumulated resentment drove him to create a shock, hoping to regain some of the power and prestige he believed were slipping from his grasp. This was the moment when survival instinct overpowered reason, leading to impulsive and dangerous actions. The reactions of those present could not avoid chaos. Whispers spread everywhere, mixed with the sighs of witnesses who felt both worried and outraged. Some appeared shocked by Ray's outburst, while others prepared mentally for sudden, unexpected developments. Their eyes shone with vigilance, ready for any situation, knowing that in this moment nothing was impossible. All attention focused on Ray, standing at the eye of the emotional and power storm. The space seemed compressed, each second filled with tension, as everyone awaited the next move from Camille Reed, the judge whose cold gaze observed every action calmly yet strictly. This tense confrontation between a man losing power and the representative of justice created a dramatic highlight unforgettable in the trial. Suddenly, like lightning striking through a silent sky, Ray Mullen swung his hand decisively and so fast that no one could react in time. This gesture was not simply an impulsive act, but contained the rage built up over time. His hand struck Camille's face hard, the slap echoing loudly throughout the courtroom, like thunder shaking a clear sky, waking everyone from the lingering tension. The slap was not only physical violence, but a clear declaration of war, a shock breaking the calm mask Ray had tried to maintain. Before the unexpected slap, a faint surprise flashed across Camille's face, as if she had not expected such a fierce outburst from Ray. But in the blink of an eye, she quickly regained her composure and steadfastness. There was no retaliation or violent response. Instead, deep restraint and inner strength were clearly expressed through her cold eyes and gentle but authoritative gestures. She remained sitting upright, her face maintaining an unshakable solemnity, as if to convey that despite the insult, justice would still stand firm. The reaction of the entire courtroom could no longer be contained. Gasps rang out rapidly, and many people breathed heavily, mixed with murmurs spreading everywhere. Everyone was stunned by this unpredictable act. Reporters quickly pulled out cameras and phones, continuously capturing that crucial moment and broadcasting it live to thousands outside. This scene was not just a moment in the trial, but became a symbol of tension, explosion, and the power challenge. That slap went beyond simple violence. It was an ultimate exposure of Ray Mullen's true nature, an aggressive man losing control and fight with Pew Wither. This was the climax of unveiling when all remaining masks fell, revealing the real person with weaknesses and desperate resistance. The slap not only changed the power dynamics between Ray and Camille, but also completely altered the trial's course, creating an unforgettable turning point. Immediately after the slap, Ray showed extreme excitement. Inside, he felt a momentary joy, a satisfaction, thinking he had regained some power and control. However, alongside this was a deep fear, anxiety about the serious consequences ahead, from the law, public opinion, and even within the police department itself. He knew that after this outburst, all eyes would be more focused on him than ever, and Camille's and others' next reactions would decide his fate. Camille allowed no moment of lost composure to last. She quickly prepared for the next response, maintaining her posture and authority against all challenges. Those around her, from lawyers to witnesses, also began restructuring their strategies and mindsets, ready for the upcoming unexpected and fierce developments in the trial. The tension and confrontation had reached their peak, opening a new chapter in the ongoing legal battle. After the shocking slap, the courtroom seemed to fall into a terrifying silence. People had not yet fully believed what had just happened, their eyes filled with confusion and unable to react. The atmosphere appeared to be calm, but in reality it was suffocatingly tense, as if silently waiting for another storm to approach. This silence lasted only a few seconds before a sound shattered it completely. Ray Mullen's phone suddenly rang. The ringing echoed through the courtroom, loud and clear, instantly dispelling the temporary quiet. The call was not just an ordinary one, but a signal heralding secrets about to be revealed. All eyes turned to Ray, who looked surprised and unprepared for this moment. The ringtone caused a slight shock in the room, mixing surprise with a hint of panic in the looks of those present. Ray was startled. His eyes quickly shifted from stunned to tense and anxious. He glanced at the phone on the table, then hastily picked it up. His eyes flashed with alertness, like someone receiving an important external signal. His voice then became low and secretive, but carried authority and urgency as he answered the call. His short and decisive replies showed he understood this was no ordinary call, but part of a larger plan in motion. The voice on the other end sounded like a thunderclap to everyone in the room. "You're doing well. Keep stirring up trouble. I'll handle the IA behind the scenes." These simple yet loaded words plunged the courtroom into a deep unease. Ray's eyes immediately revealed a hard-to-hide satisfaction mixed with high alertness. He knew he was not alone in this fight, but serving a greater, more powerful force controlling every detail of the case. Those around could not help but notice the change in Ray's behavior and expression. Whispering began to spread in small waves throughout the courtroom, signaling that everyone sensed something unusual. Camille's eyes, steady and strong, instantly sharpened. She paid attention to the smallest details, her cold gaze scanning Ray's area as if she had sensed something greater being revealed. Her vigilance was no longer mere observation, but the start of a hunt for the truth. At the courtroom's edge, lawyers and reporters began whispering about the possibility of a hidden power manipulating everything. They speculated about a mastermind never before uncovered, a powerful puppet master directing the entire legal drama. Suspicion and curiosity rose minute by minute, creating a new layer of tension engulfing the trial. From this moment, the conflict was no longer just between parties in the courtroom, but a sharp battle of intellect, power, and hidden truth. The already tense courtroom shifted to a state of unprecedented alertness. Everyone understood that the coming developments would not be simple debates or exchanges. This was when underground forces would start to reveal themselves, and those standing at the defendant's seat were no longer isolated individuals, but part of a much more complex network. Everyone was prepared mentally for the unprecedented twists and hidden truths waiting to be exposed under the light of justice. Inside the courtroom, Camille Reed maintained her calm expression, sitting upright in her authoritative chair. However, her eyes were sharp and completely focused. Through the secure audio system, a secret recorded message was played via a small connected microphone. Camille listened carefully, showing no sign of emotion or confusion, but inside she was receiving critical information that could change the entire trial's course. Her calmness was like a sturdy mask, hiding deep vigilance and quiet determination. The moment Camille received that message marked a turning point in her thinking. She maintained absolute focus, allowing no distraction. The message revealed a truth she had long suspected. Ray Mullen was not the one controlling everything as he appeared. In fact, he was just a pawn in a much bigger game. Camille understood that behind his violent, reckless actions was a corrupt power broker, a mastermind pulling the strings to manipulate the trial and hide the truth. Her emotions rose discreetly, mixed between anger at the deceit and unwavering resolve to expose the entire conspiracy. She knew handling Ray alone would not suffice, because a bigger fish was lurking behind, still hidden. This awareness compelled her to act swiftly and precisely, like never before. Immediately, Camille began forming detailed counterattack plans in her mind. She calculated every step, carefully weighing upcoming actions to not only suppress Ray's resistance, but also catch the true puppet master red-handed. She prepared to wield justice as a sharp, relentless, and effective weapon. Each strategy and move was meticulously considered to ensure no loophole for the enemy to escape. Despite knowing the truth, Camille maintained a calm demeanor before the council and audience. She revealed nothing about the message or revelation. Instead, she used her cold gaze and composure to create invisible pressure on everyone else in the courtroom. Every look from her was a warning, reminding that justice never sleeps, and truth will always be unveiled, no matter how deeply evil tries to hide. The section ended with Camille preparing for the next tactical moves in the trial. A sense of anticipation and readiness for a new climax spread throughout the courtroom like a cold breeze, signaling unprecedented events ahead. All eyes were on her, waiting for a decisive change, a spectacular reversal unfolding step by step under the powerful and intelligent hands of Camille Reed. The courtroom was enveloped in a suffocating atmosphere, sharply contrasting with the previous noise and chaos. The sudden slap had struck like a hammer blow to the hearts of everyone present. All fell silent, eyes fixed on every slightest movement of Camille Reed. She stood straight, steady in the eye of the storm, her determined face unchanged despite the clear red handprint still visible on her cheek, undeniable evidence of the recent attack. Light from the window cast a cold glow on her face, her eyes scanning the courtroom sharply, expression as cutting as a butcher's knife, cold enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The air seemed to freeze momentarily, every sound silenced in tense stillness. The steady breathing and soft rustling of paper became clearer than ever. Everyone in the room, from lawyers and court staff to witnesses, halted all activities, collectively staring at Camille, waiting to see what she would do next. No comments, no whispers, only the suspense ticking like the clock in the room. Camille did not keep them waiting long. She raised her hand, and a sharp gavel strike echoed, shaking the room with a dry, decisive sound like an order from the highest authority. "Lock the doors," her voice rang out powerfully across the space. "No one is allowed to enter or leave until further notice." This command was not a mere procedure, but a shield protecting the truth about to be revealed. Immediately, security officers checked the main entrance, ensuring every exit was sealed, and no one could come or go at this time. The door lock order made the atmosphere heavier, tension mounting like the calm before a storm. Everyone realized this moment was not ordinary. What was about to unfold would completely change the course of the trial and could shake the rotten foundations within the police department. Eyes shifted from surprise to seriousness, thick with fear mixed with curiosity. Without leaving any gap, Camille stepped to the center of the courtroom. Her voice remained calm but carried undeniable authority. "The trial will not be interrupted. The truth will be exposed to the public. Anyone attempting to obstruct will be held accountable by law." Those words rang sharply, like a sword cutting straight into each person's mind. Camille's shift from a passive to an active role deepened the heaviness and inevitability of the moment. She then turned to a nearby technician and ordered preparations to present the secret dossier collected over many months. Camille's gaze stayed cold, revealing no emotion, yet in it lay unyielding determination. The technician quickly responded, switching on the lighting and lowering the large screen from the ceiling. In the already dim courtroom, the screen's light became the brightest focus, drawing all eyes to the center of the room. No one involved in the trial looked away from the screen. The flickering light reflected on their faces, some squinting, others frowning, some clutching their hands tightly in anxiety. The suspense spread through the space, as if the whole room breathed together, waiting for the moment the truth would be unveiled. No one knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain. From this moment on, there was no room left for secrets to be hidden. The silence was briefly broken by the soft electronic sound of the projector starting, opening a new door for buried secrets soon to be revealed in the light of justice. Every gaze in the room concentrated, full of tension, awaiting the first clues from the soon-to-be-disclosed secret files. The large screen lit up, showing the first images from the secret dossier before everyone. A long list of police officers suspected of involvement in corruption and money laundering appeared clearly on the white background of digital documents. Rows of data, forged seals, fake signatures, and detailed financial reports were displayed sharply, making everyone feel they were witnessing undeniable evidence firsthand. Under the cold light of the screen, every number and line of text sliced through the mask of power that had existed too long within the Chicago Police Department. The courtroom's air became heavier than ever as the eyes of the participants moved across the projected documents. Some could not hide their panic, trembling slightly, faces suddenly pale, while others suppressed emotions, bracing themselves to maintain a calm exterior. A few lawyers in the audience quickly took notes, eyes following every detail with intense focus. Everyone understood that what was being exposed could become a verdict not only for Ray Mullen, but for the entire rotten police system lurking in the shadows. When the screen switched to the next video clip, the tension peaked. The footage clearly showed Ray and his accomplices during multiple arrests of civilians, close-up shots of violence, torture, and abuse of power. Screams echoed in the video, slamming doors, shouting, and the victims' painful sounds blended into a haunting and brutal scene. Each image stabbed directly into the conscience of the viewers and those present in the courtroom. Immediate disruption followed. Some people could not contain their emotions, pacing nervously, clutching the edge of their seats, while others sighed deeply. The naked truth, unhidden, made the air heavy, nearly suffocating. All eyes turned to Ray Mullen, who sat silently with a confused face, tense features beginning to show fear and loss of control. Ray tried to stand, hastily defending his actions, but his words choked and lacked conviction. His voice was unconfident, his responses stumbling, increasing the belief that he was trying to hide something. Some of Ray's allies began showing signs of worry, eyes scanning the courtroom's exits, whispering among themselves about the possibility that the trial could become a storm, sweeping away more than they expected. On the opposing side, lawyers quickly seized the opportunity. They loudly condemned Ray's actions, stirring public outrage and the courtroom audience's anger. Their sharp, harsh words piled pressure on Ray and his faction. Each statement was like a sharp knife, cutting into the rotten foundation of the police department's leadership. Camille Reed, from the judge's bench, looked directly at Ray with an unforgiving, steel-cold gaze. She stood, her voice ringing through the courtroom, strong and firm like a blade cutting off any escape. The arrest and search warrants were prepared for immediate issuance, making everyone feel the trial's seriousness and resolve. Tension and suspense spread into every corner of the courtroom. Everyone understood this was no ordinary trial, but a battle between justice and the dark forces that had manipulated and corrupted the system. All eyes focused on Camille, the small woman whose invisible strength threatened to collapse a rotten empire right before their eyes. Each passing second felt like the slow ticking of a bomb about to explode, carrying hope and fear for the future. Outside the courthouse, sirens wailed through the late night, tearing apart the street's usual quiet. Flashing red and green lights reflected off the dew-soaked pavement, creating a scene both urgent and grave. The internal affairs agents gathered in full force, all dressed in civilian clothes but equipped with advanced support gear and self-defense weapons. Every step they took was perfectly coordinated, each glance and gesture showing determination and decisiveness. The scene outside the courthouse was thick with tension. Tactical vehicles lined up, ready to storm inside like wolves waiting for the command to strike. No words were spoken, only the steady hum of radios and the sharp sound of quick footsteps echoed against the cold tiles. Everyone knew this was not just an arrest operation, but a revolution aimed at restoring justice to a city long stained by corruption and violence. When the go-ahead signal was given, the agents surged into the courthouse like a whirlwind. The large doors swung open as squads of IA agents moved swiftly into the courtroom, where shocked eyes still lingered from the earlier shocking slap. slap, the already tense space erupted into controlled chaos. The agents left no chance for Ray's faction to resist. They moved quickly and decisively, clearing all potential threats and immediately isolating the target for arrest. Inside the courtroom, changes happened rapidly. Witnesses to the raid were stunned, some trembling uncontrollably, while others remained silent, eyes heavy with sorrow and confusion. Beads of sweat rolled down the foreheads of those who had witnessed the brutal slap and now witnessed an unprecedented legal drama. Court staff tried to keep calm and maintain order, hurriedly advising the trial participants while creating space for the IA agents to carry out their mission. Meanwhile, Ray Mullen could hardly believe his eyes. The sudden, overwhelming appearance of the IA team shocked him deeply. Panic first took hold as his eyes darted across the room, desperately seeking support or an escape. But all exits were locked tight, agents armed and ready, closing in on every step he took. With no other option, Ray tried to resist, but his feeble, half-hearted efforts could not slow the advancing force of justice. His eyes shifted from panic to rage mixed with despair. His face twisted, teeth clenched, as if trying to swallow all his anger and defeat. As the IA agents closed in, Ray's weak shouts sounded like a final declaration of defiance, but no one paid attention anymore. He was forced down. Cold handcuffs snapped tightly around his wrists, his face smeared with sweat mixed with the red marks left by the earlier slap. Panic, disappointment, and frustration cornered Ray like a trapped beast with no way out. His gaze was no longer that of a powerful man, but that of someone about to lose everything. Courtroom's atmosphere gradually shifted from chaos to an unbelievable silence as everyone realized the legal battle had entered a completely new phase. The footsteps of the agents faded behind whispers, sighs, and admiring looks toward Camille's decisiveness. This was not merely a raid, but the turning point that would start the collapse of a long-standing dark empire. Everyone in the room deeply understood that justice, no matter how long hidden in darkness, would ultimately find the light to expose the truth. The moment Ray Mullen was escorted away, with the cold handcuffs tightening, was not just a symbol of arrest, but a sign of the end of a filthy era and the beginning of a hopeful new chapter for Chicago. As the internal affairs agents closed in on Ray Mullen, the courtroom's atmosphere became suffocating, almost tangible enough to cut with a knife. The agent's cold hands quickly grasped Ray's wrists, decisively locking the shining metal cuffs tight. The chill of the metal biting his skin felt like a muzzle binding his skin, felt like a muzzle binding his last remaining freedom. Ray felt every finger pressed down, his breath quickening, eyes growing frantic and bitter, filled with hatred directed at those escorting him. His eyes widened, searching for a gap or escape within the cold circle of agents, but all hope was gone. His cracked lips parted, then erupted into roaring screams echoing throughout the room. "You'll die with me! I was just following orders!" That outcry was not only a weak excuse but also a threat, trying to sow fear and chaos. Yet contrary to his wish, no one in the courtroom cared about his desperate declaration. Everyone understood it was just the sound of a defeated man seeking a last refuge. Around him, the spectators' eyes reflected various emotions. Some were bitter and furious, witnessing Ray's arrogance and abuse of power exposed under justice's light. Others appeared indifferent, weary from the long power games of the corrupt police faction. Some remained silent, eyes full of sadness, because what unfolded was not just a personal confrontation, but a symbol of long-standing injustice. Yet all shared one thing: no one stood with Ray at this moment. The internal affairs agents maintained strict discipline. They did not allow tension or emotion to disrupt order in the courtroom. Every action was carefully calculated, precise to the smallest detail. They knew that beyond arresting Ray, preserving the trial's solemnity was equally vital. The firm footsteps and the sound of handcuffs clicking against the floor composed a cold melody, signaling the start of a new chapter in the fight against corruption. At this moment, the trial stepped into an irreversible new phase. The feeling spread from the courtroom to the hallways and other court offices. Everyone clearly recognized this event was not just a shock in the trial, but a turning point shaking the very roots of a rotten power network. The pressure weighed not only on Ray, but also extended to his entire faction, revealing cracks within their ranks. Outside the courtroom, Ray's allies scrambled to cope with the approaching storm. Anxiety showed plainly on their faces, hands trembling over phones, urgent conversations conducted in the shadows. Could they rescue Ray in time, or would they be swept away by an unstoppable tide? Everything was at a critical level, and the answer would unfold in the following chapters. The section ends with a vivid image of Ray Mullen being escorted out of the courtroom. His eyes still held defiance, stubbornness, refusing to bow, but beneath it lay a deep despair only those standing at the brink of collapse could understand. The courtroom door closed, leaving behind an empty, quiet, yet haunting space, all eyes focused on the still-cold handcuffs, a symbol of the inevitable fall of a corrupt empire. News of Ray Mullen's arrest quickly spread throughout all levels of the police department. Phones rang incessantly as information was transmitted to every division at a rapid pace. A wave of unease swept through, turning the once quiet atmosphere of the station into a chaotic sea of people, shocked and fearful. Everyone realized that this was no longer a minor incident, but a direct threat to the power network they held. In the large room of the leadership board, Ray's direct superior, the head of the corruption chain within the department, momentarily froze upon receiving the news. Anxiety was unmistakably visible on his face. It was not just fear of exposure, but also deep concern over his shaken power and personal safety. He knew that if Ray fell, the entire scheme and network he had painstakingly built would risk being uncovered. Immediately, Ray's superior acted with lightning speed. Important files were hastily gathered, and electronic devices were concealed or prepared for destruction. He made urgent calls to allies outside, issuing orders to arrange escape routes or prepare for capture. The calls were intense and hurried, like pieces of a large-scale retreat being rapidly assembled. Not only he, but many other accomplices in the department also fell into chaos. Some argued fiercely, blaming one another, while others panicked and began calculating plans for self-preservation. Some suggested destroying evidence to avoid arrest, while others considered switching sides and confessing to secure personal safety. These actions only intensified internal disorder, exposing long-simmering conflicts. The main character's psychological tension and alertness rose significantly. Secret phone calls continued non-stop, and emergency closed-door meetings were convened in private offices. Each person tried to maintain a calm exterior, but inside, chaos was hard to control. Suspicious glances, whispered words, and furtive looks created a tense and suffocating atmosphere. Anxiety, worry, and resentment intertwined, making the environment more stifling than ever. Particularly, interactions between Ray's superior and his allies revealed clear internal conflicts. Distrust began to grow as everyone feared being put in a difficult position if others turned their backs. Gentle but meaningful warnings and probing questions were exchanged, quietly but tensely. Allies attempted to pull each other into loyalty, yet deep doubts about each other's allegiance remained unmistakable. Outside the divisions, the police station seemed normal on the surface, but a hidden crisis was unfolding. Departments operated at an unusually fast pace, staff moved hurriedly, their faces marked by vigilance and worry. Sneaky glances around and whispered voices mixed with quick footsteps made the atmosphere subtly chaotic. Some tried to stay calm and carry on as usual, while many others began contemplating the dark future ahead. The whole scene inside the police station resembled a disturbed ant colony, with people caught in a spiral of fear, suspicion, and confusion. Every small action could shake the entire power network. With Ray Mullen arrested, no one could be certain who would be the next dragged into the cold light of truth. Right after hearing the news of Ray's arrest, his superior could not hesitate for a second longer. The decision to leave the police station was made amid extreme urgency and tension. Fast footsteps echoed through the corridors as he and a close group of accomplices quickly gathered the most important documents, preparing to leave immediately. They got into private cars parked nearby, eyes scanning around with caution, every passing second measured as if it were the final moments of a deadly game. Tension was tight among the group, each person deeply feeling fear of capture and creeping panic. Whispered voices, hurried exchanges of glances between accomplices, mixed with promises and threats, created a chaotic scene under strict control. Everyone understood that a single mistake could cause the total collapse of the network they had built over many years. As the group prepared to get into the cars, everything seemed to go smoothly until suddenly a vehicle from Internal Affairs appeared unexpectedly, blocking the exit from the parking lot. Bright headlights and blaring sirens signaled that the escape route was sealed. Ray's superior and his accomplices were startled, panic flashing in their eyes as they realized there was no way back. Surprise and panic gradually turned into a feeling of being overwhelmed by an invisible wall. Internal Affairs agents quickly deployed forces, surrounding the group's vehicle with absolute professionalism. They stood densely around the car, ready for any situation. There was no leniency, no chance for resistance or escape. In an instant, the atmosphere grew suffocating, tense like a drawn bowstring waiting for release. Ray's superior tried to remain calm, using his power and connections to negotiate, begging for a delay with the Internal Affairs agents. But all his efforts were futile. The agents were determined not to retreat, fully aware of the mission's importance and unwilling to allow any compromise to break the plan. The brief but dramatic confrontation took place right in the parking lot. Words and tense glances cut deep as every passing second felt like a countdown toward an unavoidable outcome. Both sides gathered all their strength, waiting for the decisive strike everyone knew was inevitable. Finally, Ray's superior realized the escape plan had completely failed. He looked around, his expression shifting with tension and despair etched clearly on his face. The harsh truth that there was nowhere left to run, no one left to rely on, weighed heavily on his mind. This moment marked not only his personal collapse, but also signaled an impending seismic shock that would sweep through the powerful faction he represented. The image of Ray's superior standing surrounded by Internal Affairs agents, eyes full of defiance yet revealing deep helplessness and despair, closes this part of the story with a breathless feeling and opens the way to intense developments ahead. The story continues with dramatic changes as Ray's opponents and allies will have to face unpredictable consequences from this sudden legal blow. The audience, sitting just outside the courtroom, could not take their eyes off their phone screens. One of them began live streaming the moment when police officer Ray Mullen slapped Judge Camille Reed across the face, immediately followed by footage of Ray being escorted out of the courtroom by Internal Affairs agents. This vivid, authentic, and powerful scene was broadcast live on major social media platforms. In an instant, the clip spread rapidly on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter, attracting unbelievable attention from the online community. The speed of the video's spread was like a bomb exploding in the virtual world. Thousands of views, comments, and shares within minutes transformed the story from a minor court hearing into a national phenomenon. The number of followers surged, making everyone unable to stop discussing and sharing their emotions. People eagerly anticipated a major change in the police system, long regarded as corrupt and unjust. The online community's reaction quickly grew intense. A flood of angry comments overwhelmed posts with the video, strongly condemning Ray's abuse of power. Many expressed continuous support for Judge Camille Reed, who dared to stand up for justice despite facing great challenges. The spirit of solidarity and the thirst for justice manifested through hashtags such as Slap the Judge, Justice for Camille, and Chicago Corruption, which quickly climbed trending charts and spread across social social networks. Not only did the youth and online community respond, but major news outlets also could not stay out of the story. They promptly used the clip as the focal point of their articles, analyzing and providing in-depth assessments of Ray's lawless actions. Commentators and legal experts appeared continuously on media channels to share opinions, criticize Ray's disregard for the law, and call for a serious and transparent investigation. The story quickly became a hot topic on news programs and talk shows, drawing attention from both the government and the public. This explosion triggered a strong wave of social pressure. Citizens began organizing small protests at multiple locations throughout Chicago, carrying banners and signs demanding justice and opposing police corruption. Social organizations and civil rights groups collectively spoke out, urging authorities to expand investigations and strictly punish those who violated the law. The image of Camille Reed, the resilient female judge, gradually became a symbol of relentless struggle against corruption and tyranny. The social media revolution created an unstoppable chain reaction. People from all over, whether ordinary citizens or influential figures, voiced support and shared the story. Every share and comment was a powerful call for fairness and transparency within the legal system. Meanwhile, those who once believed themselves invisible in the shadows now faced the public spotlight and growing pressure. In the following days, the courtroom was no longer just a place for legal debates, but became an arena of public opinion. The story of the slap and Ray's arrest turned into a symbol of the fight against police corruption, a critical issue not only for Chicago, but across the United States. Through this, Camille Reed's image was etched as a hero not only in court, but also across social media, inspiring many to stand up for justice. The social media effect completely shifted the balance of power, forcing those in authority to reassess their position and the strength of public opinion. This became a costly lesson on the power of transparency and speaking out, firmly recorded in modern legal history. From this point on, justice was no longer a matter for one individual, but the voice of the entire community. As the clip of Ray Mullen's slap and arrest spread widely on social networks, the atmosphere inside the police station grew more chaotic than ever. Ray's superior and close allies were unsettled and fearful that their wrongdoing would be exposed to public view. The video's spread not only shook outside public opinion, but also caused turbulent waves within the force, further fracturing already fragile relationships. While some tried to remain silent and avoid possible trouble, many took advantage of the moment to switch sides, evade prosecution, or even become whistleblowers to protect themselves. Increasing instability and mutual suspicion deepened, making the police department's internal situation chaotic and divided into multiple factions with different goals and strategies. Many senior leaders began to worry about being exposed and losing power. Facing a strong wave of public support for Camille Reed and harsh criticism of Ray's actions, the opposition in court found themselves on the defensive. The defense lawyer leveraged media power and public support to increase pressure on Ray's side. Speeches and legal documents were reinforced by public consensus and attention, forming a force that could not be ignored. Camille seized this momentum to push the investigation forward, publicly revealing new evidence, leaving the opposition unprepared. All parties involved in the trial prepared mentally for increasingly tense and fierce developments in upcoming hearings. They realized this was no longer a simple legal dispute, but a political and media battle where public opinion's power could deeply influence the final outcome. Camille, standing at the center, fully understood her crucial role in this legal and public opinion struggle. The pressure and expectations from the community were both a great source of strength and a heavy responsibility. She knew failure was not an option, not just for herself, but for the voice of justice she represented. Meanwhile, Ray and his allies increasingly sensed their loss of control. Gradually, certainty in their power and safety was replaced by anxiety and fear. Signs of instability appeared as they began to doubt one another and worry about the uncertain future ahead. This part closes with a suffocating feeling, like a storm about to break. signaling that the legal and media battle will become even more intense and fierce. New conflicts, dark schemes, and unexpected twists promise to reshape the entire situation. The story continues to open with dramatic new chapters, where truth and justice are still fiercely fought for each day. Inside the police department's offices, a chaotic storm is silently breaking out. The seemingly peaceful days had only been a veil covering a network full of plots and conflicts. News of Ray Mullen's arrest swept through every room like an electric shock, shaking both the leaders and the staff. From the long corridors to the small offices, tension showed clearly in every gaze and silent gesture, full of hidden meaning. The atmosphere was suffocating, thick with rumors, scrutinizing looks, and considerable caution among each other in a never-ending underground power struggle. Immediately, staff groups began to clearly split into different factions. One side remained loyal to Ray Mullen, persistently defending and justifying his actions despite undeniable evidence. They organized secret meetings to discuss counterattack plans aimed at reversing the situation or at least protecting their comrades from prosecution. In these meetings, although anxiety was evident, determination stood firm like a wall to prevent the opposing faction from gaining advantage. Encouraging words and promises of mutual support were exchanged in the tense atmosphere, maintaining temporary unity. On the opposite side, another group of officers and employees started openly deciding to withdraw from Ray's faction. They did not want to get deeply involved in the escalating crisis, fearing that loyalty would cost them too much. Some quietly sought cooperation with the investigation agency, disclosing what they knew to mitigate personal consequences. This choice made the internal atmosphere even more suffocating and chaotic. Conflicts, suspicion, and doubt spread widely, causing departments to lose unity, and even close colleagues began to be wary of one another. Conversations between factions grew increasingly tense. Fierce debates mixed with threats and warnings continuously took place, making the department feel like a potential battlefield. Alongside these were promises and agreements made in private meetings to maintain stability or form new alliances. Every action was carefully considered because a single wrong step could lead to the collapse of an entire group. The deepening division turned the police department into a place full of conflicts and covert struggles. Everyone held personal calculations, simultaneously fearful and trying to protect themselves amid the crisis storm. Many wondered whether this rupture could be healed or if it was a turning point leading to worse upheavals. From these first cracks, a new power struggle quietly began, not only outside the courtroom, but right inside the police department, once regarded as a firm stronghold of the law. Following the first cracks inside the police department, an underground war started to form with growing intensity. Factions no longer confronted each other directly. Instead, they built separate intelligence networks to secretly monitor and watch each other. Secret calls were made continuously, and important information was transmitted in the dark through cautious and suspicious private meetings. Every move was carefully weighed, because even a small mistake could cause someone to lose everything. The atmosphere in the department became suffocating and tense, like a bomb waiting to explode. Amid this high-pressure environment, those on the sidelines did not remain idle. They quickly seized opportunities to increase influence and attract more members to their side. Individuals previously unrelated to the major factions began building new alliances, exploiting divisions to fill power vacuums. They aspired to become a new force, preparing strategic steps to seize power in the near future. Meanwhile, emerging superiors and opposing factions also quietly prepared their plans. They no longer hid their intentions but started gathering forces, strengthening relationships, and launching activities to oust rivals. The power game had entered a new phase. No longer just direct clashes, but an indirect war interwoven with scheming and careful calculation. The mindset of the main characters in the police department is clearly depicted in this context. Fear of collapse, betrayal, and loss of power made many more cunning than ever. Some remained resolute and brave, standing firm amid the storm, while others began losing trust in their teammates. doubting and watching every move of each other. From close colleagues, they turned into enemies in the shadows, each looking out for their own safety. The tense and suffocating atmosphere in the police department persisted and even intensified over time. Everyone sensed the coming upheaval, as the turning points involving power, betrayal, and internal struggles would continue with greater intensity. The conflict was no longer just a legal issue, but had become a deadly power game where everyone must pay any price to survive and win. This part closes, opening a new dramatic chapter in the story, promising more complex developments, more intense confrontations, and stunning twists to be revealed in the following parts. The courtroom following the previous chaotic events remained heavy and tense. Everyone in the room exchanged uneasy and uncertain glances. The police officers seated among the officials clearly showed fear. Their expressions shifted from initial confidence to confusion and caution. Some officials could not hide their anxiety, whispering quietly to one another, trying to find consensus amid increasingly fierce public opinion outside. The room seemed to shrink, the heavy pressure weighing down on each person. Yet amid all this chaos, a steadfast figure rose, becoming a spiritual pillar for everyone. Camille Reed, the female judge, maintained control from the very first moments after the chaos subsided. Her eyes were cold, decisive, and full of strength, showing no sign of wavering, despite having endured both physical and mental attacks. Slaps and insulting words could not shake her firm will. Her long, steady hand gripped the wooden gavel, striking the table with a clear and resolute sound that seemed to awaken the entire room, silencing all whispers and establishing the necessary solemnity for a trial in critical condition. Camille's voice rang out with authority and undeniability. The trial continues. No one escapes. This declaration was not only an order but also a firm affirmation of justice, causing everyone in the room to look up at her with a mixture of surprise, doubt, and finally submission. At that moment, Camille was not merely a judge managing the trial. She became a legal warrior, using words and actions to defeat the remaining corrupt individuals in the room. Her tone was sharp and unyielding, creating an invisible pressure on everyone present. The criminals left could not hide their fear in their eyes and tense expressions. They looked at each other, calculating and panicking, yet they clearly felt powerless, facing an impenetrable justice led by Camille. The atmosphere in the courtroom gradually shifted. The previous chaos and tension gave way to order and focus. Lawyers, reporters, and other officers were ordered into absolute silence as they prepared for the next phase of the trial, where crucial evidence and testimonies would be presented. The sound of pages turning and steady breaths mixed with solemnity, creating a heavy yet hopeful space for justice gradually be served. Gradually, under the cold courtroom light, all eyes were fixed on Camille, standing in the fire, unyielding and determined to bring the truth to light. Camille Reed was not only an impeccably calm judge, but also a sharp strategist who had meticulously prepared for this day for a long time. Arresting Ray Mullen was just one link in the complex plan she and her team had built. Over many months, a closely coordinated network between legal units such as Internal Affairs, the Federal Department of Justice, and special agents had been established to peel back layers of deep corruption within the Chicago Police Department. Every step, every piece of evidence gathered was carefully prepared, leaving no chance for criminals to escape. In full view of the courtroom, Camille presented secret video clips, important testimonies, and confidential documents collected from inside the police department. These vivid and clear images not only exposed criminal acts, but also crushed every denial from the defendants. Camille's proactive stance was evident in every action and word, commanding full attention. The atmosphere became tense once more, but this time it was focused and serious, like never before. Camille quickly demanded the reading of new testimonies and the addition of recently collected evidence. Each testimony sank the opposing faction deeper into a defensive stance. No denials could stand against such clear evidence. Some defendants tried to refute or cause confusion, but all efforts seemed hopeless before Camille's sharp arguments. Step by step, she dismantled each point and rebutted with precision, leaving the corrupt with no escape but to endure under that invisible yet unmistakable pressure. The double trap Camille set was not only a sophisticated legal strategy but also a powerful psychological weapon. The corrupt individuals were caught between the irrefutable law and the boiling public opinion outside the court. They were cornered, unable to operate as before. Television reporters and journalists quickly broadcast news. Livestream clips from the courtroom spread rapidly, turning the case into a national focal point. The crowd outside was watching and waiting for justice to be served, creating enormous pressure that the wrongdoers knew they could not withstand. Camille understood that this pressure was her greatest ally in this uncompromising battle. She seized the moment to increase the pressure, declaring to all that justice would have no sanctuary, no place for any cover-up or concealment. This trial is not just the judgment of the criminals before us, but a declaration of war against the dark system that exists within Chicago, she said firmly. Ending this section, Camille left everyone with a strong belief. Justice was on the path to victory. Yet, at the same time, a major question arose. How would the corrupt faction respond to this carefully laid trap? The trial continued in an atmosphere of extreme tension as layers of secrecy gradually unfolded. All eyes in the courtroom focused on the man standing at the witness stand, a loyal henchman of Ray Mullen, once the right-hand man in dark operations. His face clearly showed exhaustion, his eyes brimming with tears as if carrying secrets that could no longer be hidden. The inner turmoil, visible in every gesture, made everyone sense the chaotic and fierce struggle between fear and the desire for freedom. He recalled each time he took part in money laundering, protection rackets, and bribery as an inevitable part of the network Ray built. Now, standing before the law, the fear of punishment and regret for the impact on his family surged within him, pushing him to confess. This moment was unbearable to hold back. Tears flowed, and sincere sobs echoed, silencing the courtroom. Everyone empathized and was stunned by the truth being revealed. The initial testimony mentioned seemingly minor incidents, thought insignificant, but actually the first links in a chain of sophisticated money laundering and bribery acts that had persisted for years. He detailed how black money was moved through anonymous accounts and protection rackets disguised as legitimate businesses. The clear details surprised the judge, lawyers, and reporters alike. The testimony also briefly exposed high-ranking city officials, those who stood behind, covering up, and managed the corrupt network, creating a heavy shadow over the trial. The atmosphere grew heavier as people realized this was no longer an ordinary case. The testimony of Ray's henchman was a powerful blow, opening the door for justice to penetrate the root of corruption and dark power. Those who believed in the inviolability of the network were now confused and fearful. Camille Reed showed more determination and resolve than ever. She understood that as long as she continued to unravel these testimonies, the truth could no longer be buried, and justice would prevail, no matter how difficult the path. The more detailed the henchman's testimony became, the more it expanded the dark picture of a complex, tightly organized money laundering network. He described every operational step, from small amounts transferred to secret accounts, accumulating into large sums, then laundered through shell companies and shadowy financial services. Each money transfer point was a crucial link, coordinated closely among the henchmen to ensure no funds slipped outside control. The sophisticated tricks used to hide traces made tracking difficult without coordinated evidence. Not only low-level henchmen, but the testimony also clarified the involvement of many police officials. They were not only bribed but also actively protected the operation, creating a dirty power circle. They were an inseparable part of the laundering plan, turning the police force into a disguised criminal organization. These dark aspects were gradually exposed through each testimony, stirring outrage among witnesses. What stunned everyone most was the network's connection to senior city leaders. They were once seen as symbols of justice, but were now accused of covering up and managing illegal activities, using their power to protect personal interests and maintain influence in the shadows. The revelation caused deep disappointment, mixed with anger and concern for the future, among those in the room. The trial became more dramatic as Camille and the lawyers leveraged this information to increase legal pressure on the defendants. Camille pointed out the dangerous links between the accused and the dark power system, demanding an expanded investigation that spared no one. Her sharp arguments threw the defense into panic and loss of control, especially the accomplices in the organized crime network. The tension was like a stretched string. Everyone felt a significant shift in the case. The testimony was a fierce wave pushing the truth forward, shaking the foundation of the long-standing dark power. All eyes turned to Camille, the frontline warrior of this relentless battle. The big question arose: would the consequences of the testimony cause the corruption network to completely collapse? Or did the powers still have one last move to defend themselves? The ending opened a thrilling scenario, promising intense developments ahead as the fight between justice and dark power reached its climax. The truth was slowly emerging, justice drawing closer, but it also meant an unavoidable, fierce confrontation. This marked the most crucial turning point in dismantling the dark forces, and paved the way for Camille on her path to conquering justice. The atmosphere in the courtroom grew thick and suffocating with extreme tension. Every eye followed each movement and every word spoken as the evidence of the corruption network became increasingly clear. The corrupt faction gradually found themselves cornered. Among the defendants, an old henchman of Ray Mullen sat quietly, his face weary, mixed with despair and tension. He seemed to be standing on the brink of an unavoidable collapse. Chaos surged within his soul. The days spent as a subordinate, involved in money laundering, protection rackets, and bribery, now felt like deep stabs to the heart. Hatred toward the one who exploited him, and the dirty system choking justice, took hold. The will to start over and destroy everything, even if it required reckless violence, slowly consumed him. He understood this was a decisive moment. If he did not act, the entire corruption network would be exposed, with consequences not only for him, but also for his loved ones. As all eyes tracked him, he quietly drew a concealed gun. His movements were slow but deliberate, stepping through the rows, never taking his eyes off a single target, Camille Reed. His gaze flashed with madness mixed with wildness, making the air in the room even more stifling. No one recognized the dark plot unfolding, only a tense feeling pounding like a drum in their chests. In an instant, he positioned himself ready to fire. Everything seemed frozen, silent except for rapid breaths and the quiet ticking of the clock. He aimed the gun at Camille, preparing to pull the trigger. Camille's eyes noticed the unusual movement, but remained absolutely calm, a sharp alertness shining deep in her gaze. The space tightened. The courtroom fell into a suffocating silence, waiting for the moment that could change everything. No one dared to breathe heavily or move. Each second stretched like a century. This was not just a dangerous moment, but a life and death test for Camille, between justice and violence, truth and darkness. Just as the gun was aimed at Camille, a figure flashed like lightning beside her. It was an undercover agent, standing near Camille but unnoticed by most. With perfect speed and precision, the agent allowed no chance for danger. A shot rang out, piercing the silent space. Ray's henchman was immediately struck down, collapsing to the floor with eyes wide in terror. The action was like a thunderbolt striking the courtroom, saving Camille and dispersing the seeds of widespread violence. The gunshot triggered an alarm, causing the courtroom to erupt into chaos. Shouts rang everywhere as attendees sought shelter or moved away from the scene. The atmosphere was chaotic for several seconds, filled with fear and shock. Amid the storm, Camille remained astonishingly calm. She stood firm, her determined gaze radiating safety to those around her, helping them regain composure. Soon after, police quickly secured the scene. The The fallen gunman was surrounded while officers searched for weapons and collected evidence. This was not only for legal purposes, but also proof of the corruption faction's danger and cunning, daring to bring violence into the courtroom. The incident marked a serious turning point, making everyone deeply aware of the corruption's filth and the ruthless intensity of this legal battle. The dramatic event had wide-reaching legal and psychological impacts on all involved. It shook the spirit of the corrupt faction and strengthened the belief and morale of the justice side. Camille and her team clearly sensed the shift, understanding that the opposing faction was now on the defensive. Their next moves would determine the future of the city and whether justice would be upheld. The gun incident in the courtroom paved the way for more thrilling developments. It heightened suspense and raised the trial's importance, becoming a focal point for media and public opinion. The struggle between justice and dark forces entered a new, challenging chapter. Everyone awaited how Camille and the justice faction would continue to fight to protect truth and fairness in a city riddled with crime and corruption. The atmosphere in the courtroom reached a peak of tension, each passing minute weighed down by the anticipation of the public and the press. All eyes focused on the trial venue, waiting for a major breakthrough to expose the entire corruption network that was gradually being uncovered. The trial was no longer just about prosecuting low-level ringleaders. Attention shifted to the powerful figure behind those dark schemes. A confidential meeting between the police, internal inspectors, and federal agents confirmed the determination to capture the head of this network, the true final boss. This figure was the former candidate for mayor of Chicago, an ambitious politician with a polished appearance and promises to change the city. But beneath that perfection was a cold, cunning nature, always ready to use any means to maintain power and personal interests. He was the puppeteer, manipulating factions and standing behind all the dark activities, including those involving Ray Mullen and his accomplices. When authorities completed the procedures, an urgent arrest warrant was issued. Coordinated efforts among the forces ensured the suspect had no chance to escape or resist. News of the arrest order quickly spread through media outlets, with reporters and cameramen rushing to his residence. Police cars blared sirens loudly at the gate, signaling a major event was about to happen. Under the constant flash of dozens of cameras, the former mayoral candidate was escorted out, hands tightly bound, unable to resist. His face remained cold, but his eyes betrayed tension and anxiety. Security officers held him firmly at every step to prevent any incidents. The crowd of reporters shouted questions relentlessly, but he remained silent, moving toward the patrol car. The scene of him being dragged in front of the media cameras became a symbol of the collapse of a dark power empire. Loudspeakers announced the arrest of the figure behind many shocking corruption cases in the city. The crowd outside the court reacted fiercely, chanting slogans demanding justice, while many watched with astonished and angry eyes. This event marked a historic moment, opening a new chapter in Chicago's fight against corruption. The final boss stepped into the light under the gaze of hundreds of lenses and the crowd's eyes. Despite being arrested, he maintained a cold, authoritative demeanor, as if never shaken. His sharp eyes calculated each step in the power game he once controlled. Every small gesture radiated the aura of a leader, not easily subdued, even with his hands tied. As he appeared, a sharp voice rang out, "He is the snake wearing the mask of justice." This phrase not only accused the individual, but also exposed the true nature of the head of the corruption empire. It was a powerful blow to the false facade, making it impossible for anyone to deny the truth that had been hidden for too long. The evidence was presented clearly and convincingly, from sophisticated money laundering schemes, manipulation of police forces to protect personal interests, to political manipulation maintaining power and shielding the corruption network. Secret documents, recordings, and financial evidence, publicly revealed, made the illegal activities undeniable. This event not only shattered the image of a reputable politician, but also shook the city's political and social system. Public reaction was intense, with cheers demanding justice ringing everywhere, mixed with boos and anger. The anger and disappointment were evident on every face, turning the trial trial into a symbol of the fight against corruption and injustice. Meanwhile, the opposition and the former allies of the final boss panicked, trying to minimize the impact and protect their interests. But the growing truth and public pressure left them more confused than ever. The conclusion of this segment marked an important turning point, the near-complete collapse of the corrupt empire that had long harmed the city. At the same time, a big question arose. Would justice be restored and a transparent, clean system built? What would Chicago's future be after this storm? These questions opened the premise for the final part, where truth and hope would be tested and justice would finally be decided. The courtroom was engulfed in a suffocating silence, the space seemingly frozen in a moment of great significance. Every eye was fixed on Camille Reed, the steadfast judge who had endured countless challenges throughout the case, now preparing to deliver the final verdict. No sound disturbed the absolute focus of those present. The tension was visible on every face, from lawyers and police officers to citizens. Everyone understood this was a major turning point for justice in the city of Chicago. Camille stood upright, her gaze cold, solemn, and determined. Her expression showed the weariness of a difficult journey, but also radiated an unshakable belief that fairness would prevail. She took a deep breath, raised the wooden gavel, ready for the momentous declaration. Camille's voice rang out firmly. From today, Chicago will no longer tolerate corrupt officials in uniform. The statement thundered through the room, compressing the courtroom's atmosphere before exploding into a wave of intense emotion. This was not just the end of the trial, but the final judgment on a system that had once been corrupted. Following the declaration, the courtroom fell into profound silence, so deep that one could hear every breath and the rapid heartbeat. The decisive strike of the gavel echoed, closing a painful yet hopeful chapter in history. That sound resonated far and wide, affirming that justice had been served, leaving no room for those who once abused power and harmed the city. Reactions within the courtroom varied. The justice sighed. Lawyers, witnesses, and citizens exhaled in relief, shedding a burden long carried. Many smiled with joy and hope. In contrast, the corrupt faction lowered their heads in silence or showed frustration, unable to hide their disappointment as their empire of power collapsed. The solemn atmosphere mingled with emotions, painting a vivid picture of justice's triumph over darkness. Quiet applause and eyes full of trust blended together, creating a victorious anthem of truth. This marked the end of a long, arduous battle and the beginning of a new chapter, a Chicago where justice is protected and the ghosts of the past gradually swept away by the wind outside. The courtroom lights dimmed slowly, each patch of brightness disappearing. The room, once filled with voices and gavel strikes, became gloomy, like a full stop to the dark forces that once ruled. Shadows covered the traces of corruption and injustice, yet in that stillness it felt as if a new light was about to pierce the darkness, promising change. That light was not inside the courtroom, but outside, where life continued. The streets bustling and people looked toward the future. The sound of the wind blowing through Chicago's streets was like a deep sigh, sweeping away the dark ghosts of the past. The wind cleansed, removing dust and wounds left by crimes and the indifference of former powers. The people out there, despite their busy lives, carried new hope, a belief that justice would finally be realized and the city restored to transparency and fairness. Camille stood silently in the almost empty room, reflecting on the arduous journey just passed. Sleepless nights, dangers faced, and immense pressure. Yet her faith and resolve never dimmed. She understood that today's victory was only the first step in rebuilding trust for the city and its people. Though the light changed clearly, Camille knew many challenges lay ahead. The road to restoring justice was uneven and full of traps. The story was not over, and questions about the future remained open. Would Chicago rise strongly to escape the shadow of its past? Would justice be maintained for generations to come? These questions served as reminders and sources of motivation for Camille and her team to keep fighting, keeping hope alive in their hearts. The closing image was a Chicago reborn, where light and darkness fought ceaselessly, but that light carried growing faith and hope. The battle for justice was not finished, but today people glimpsed a faint light light, opening a new chapter for the city. This story teaches us not to judge others hastily based on external prejudices. The true talent and value of each person cannot be underestimated or judged by appearances alone. Despite facing challenges and biases, justice always finds a way to win and turn the tide. From the personal stories of the characters, we learn a greater lesson about perseverance, courage, and belief in social fairness. Ask yourself, have you ever been misjudged because others did not understand you? Have you ever been underestimated, but silently proven yourself better than expected? If this story makes you think, share it so others can also learn from it and understand their own value. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more inspiring and meaningful stories that spread messages of justice and belief in positive change in society.